What's good, everybody? Excited to be back in Boston, and we are here for another episode of Volnay Live. Could not be more excited for today's guest. We have Marc from Choose Boston. He is one of the most knowledgeable developers, builders that I know. I leverage him for stuff that I'm working on, questions, guidance. He's got tons of experience, and I think it's something that, this is something that everyone's going to want to watch. Should have him joining in here shortly.
Whoa.
What's up?
What's happening, man?
How's it going?
It's been like a crazy day. I always feel like I'm going to have all this free time, and then these days, like quarantine days, are flying by somehow.
I think that's one thing that's like been good. I've been away, obviously, and like I look at my day today, and it's like I'm not getting anything done because I'm back into my old routine, getting in my car, driving around to the job sites. Like, I spend all day bouncing around to stuff, and I don't get anything actually accomplished. Yeah. And, now I'm back here rushing through stuff. I'm like, you had all day, but you just spend your time driving around.
You get a little glow going. It seems like maybe a little sunburn.
Yeah, I got some sun. Yeah. Feeling good.
It's good. The mask.
Yeah. The mask. Dude, masks. Wait, is it Friday yet? Oh, almost. Friday night masks. Well, thanks for joining us. You and I have talked before, but I thought it'd be good to get you on and kind of do more of a formal Volnay Live where we, kind of hear your story and, let people ask questions. But, kind of overall, you and I will just kind of have a conversation about real estate in general, and then careers and, kind of COVID or, wherever the conversation goes. But first off, let's just kind of hear about your story for people that don't know and how you ended up in real estate.
Absolutely, man. I mean, first and foremost, I'm a builder by trade and training. So I spent 5-6 years out of school working for one of the largest general contractors in the city, and bought my first property in 2009 and did sort of like the BRRRR strategy, right? Buy, renovate, refinance, and then just rolled that into the next one. And I was fortunate enough to be doing that in a rising tide environment. And that was sort of my start. But I don't know that I set out to be a real estate developer. I think I just wanted to buy a place and build some equity into it, and kind of finished that and was like, wow, I could replicate that recipe. That was cool.
Yeah, I think that people ask me, as my business has grown, they're like, oh, you had a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan.
Yeah.
And I'm like, honestly, no. It's like I could have never, if you asked me when I started, if I'd be doing what I'm doing now, no, I would have never said that. It's just like, I honestly think this business, as you gain experience, as you gain knowledge, as you see what works and what doesn't, it kind of can build on its own if you keep having successes.
Yeah.
At least that's how it worked for me. So talk about that first project. I know we've done that before, but run them through why you bought it, what was there, and how did that work for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I picked up, it was a single family, it was a 3-bedroom, and I liked it because I figured I could have 2 buddies, 2 roommates, pay the rent, really pay the mortgage. And so I bought that for $275,000. I think I spent $55,000. I actually almost gutted the place. We were very scrappy back then, if you recall. One of my favorite stories, the post office was across the street, and they used to give you these mailers, and it would give you like a Comcast coupon, Crate and Barrel, but there was a Home Depot or a Lowe's coupon for 10% off. And I used to just raid the post office for these 10% off all my purchases.
Yeah, nice. And so that was a BRRRR strategy, right? So you renovated it. How long did the renovations take you, and any lessons learned on that first project?
Yeah, it took about 6 months, and there were a couple points through the renovation. I remember one in particular where I must have hit a wire, shorted a wire, right? I think I drove a nail through a wire, and I just didn't know my ass from my elbow. And I remember all the power going off, and like, it wasn't obvious to me what just happened, except that I had no power anymore, and like, I couldn't figure the things out myself, and I thought for sure I screwed everything up, and I need to rewire the whole house. And just you figure it out, right? Like you learn that like there's going to be stumbles. You just need to keep steady, stay the course, and I think you come through on the other end, and you realize like I can do this.
So you at the start, you said that you're a builder by trade. So to tell the people, what does that mean? Does that mean that give Marc a tool belt and I can build a high rise? Or does that, what do you mean when you say you're a builder?
Yeah, definitely don't give me a tool belt, but so I'm handy enough, right? Like I keep a set of tools in my truck, and if I need to do some light carpentry or jump into something, I can. But moreover, I think I really understand as a general contractor how to buy out a job, how to write contracts, how to budget and predict costs, and shape the design in a way that's really cost effective for a real estate developer.
Yeah. So so when you're looking at a budget and you're looking at a project, say it's a renovation or a large project, what are the things that you're looking at when going into forming the budget? Is it, what have you picked up over the years? Obviously you worked at a, large firm before, but what are things that newbies should do when they're deciding out how to budget a project?
Yeah, it's really tough, right? Like, especially from a newbie's perspective, because the best answer I can give you is I'm going to push and pull. I'm going to grab a previous related project and I'm going to take that budget. I'm going to put my new one and I'm going to kind of compare and contrast each line item and sort of say like, hey, this is actually the same number of bathrooms and very similar plumbing. I'll take that plumbing number, massage a little, but like, wow, here we have to dig out a basement. So I'm going to grab, a dig out and maybe some concrete costs and pull it in, and sort of you just manipulate and work from historical costs. But if you don't have historical costs to draw from, then you need to, rely on somebody who does. And that might be a general contractor or a friend with some more experience in that.
Yeah, I think that's a lesson learned for me was taking the time when you do your first project, sit down afterwards for a couple hours and organize the expenses really clearly and start building a database for yourself. That's something that I have all the expenses, but it's just like an Excel file, like boom, 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 boom. I didn't put it into a format until recently that allowed us to actually use it for value engineering the next project.
For sure.
So let's talk about that idea of GCing yourself or hiring a GC. So how should someone go about that process of deciding whether they can handle it themselves or whether they need a general contractor? At what point do you need a general contractor? And what are things someone should be careful of when hiring a general contractor?
Yeah, a lot in that question. One thing I like to say, crawl before you walk, walk before you run. And so if you're taking on a light renovation and there's limited scope, you might need a plumber, a carpenter, an electrician, because you're going to do the bathrooms and kitchens over. Yeah, GC it yourself, because absent that, your GC is going to mark up the plumber and the electrician and bill you for his work. And you didn't learn. I think you missed an opportunity to kind of make some mistakes and figure things out and learn. And so, assuming it's a modest project, I don't think that's super scary. There's obviously logistical challenges with builder's licenses and being able to pull a permit or not. So it's not as though you can just go for it. But oftentimes municipalities will give a lot of latitude to homeowners. So if it is your primary residence, you can kind of come in there and write a letter that says, dear city, I'm the owner and I'm going to pull this permit. And up to a certain limit, usually it's like 2 units or less, that they'll often allow you to run with the ball.
Yeah, and I think that's something, if you're getting started, it's 2 units or less, and you can do it yourself. 3 units or more, you need a GC, or at least someone as an owner's rep to pull your permits and work alongside you. Yeah. There's obviously ways that people get around that. They have like a owner's rep who pulls the permit or some type of thing like that. But if you're getting into a project, it's your first one, you want to, on a budget, the 2-unit ones could work better because you can pull your own permit. Although I recommend never buying a 2-unit building. I think all the money is in the 3rd and the 4th unit. I think getting into a 2-unit project, it just always seems like there's not enough juice on it. I don't know if you agree, but it always seems like it that way for me.
It's funny because I've often encouraged newbies to look at single families. I kind of think that single families are a blind spot in the market. So I think that new first-time home buyers often like the training wheels of a condominium. And real bigger investors want 3, 4, 5+ units. And if you can find a single family with 4 bedrooms that you can rent, fill with young professionals, that could cash flow nicely and get your foot in the door.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm closing on a single family next month in South Boston. It was, we ended up scooping it up for a really great price, right around 600,000, 6 beds. And we haven't even renovated it yet. And we've got applications at 7,600 a month.
Nice. Yeah, that's great. Good for you guys.
7,600. It's like that for, we're going to put in about $100,000 of renovations, 150, 200K, somewhere in that ballpark. But
not to mention, I don't love renovating condominiums. Obviously there's times and there's a time and a place, but one, I think condo fees are kind of like like when you buy a mutual fund and there's what do they call it? You're from Wellington, like, loaded mutual funds or non-loaded, like over time, those management fees erode your profits. Yeah. And 2, if you need to move a sewer stack or go into someone else's ceiling, it's just, I don't like dealing with other people if I can avoid it.
Yeah. We've only done one. We did a penthouse condo. It was one of my second or third projects. And it was a nightmare because, like, dealing with the 2 units below and everything, and the master insurance policy was not high enough, and there was a lot of headaches. So, yeah, I think getting into your own building, whether it's a 2 or a 1 or a 3, definitely, there's a lot of upside to that. Just a quick reminder, guys, keep sending questions in the comments field or using the questions option. We'll get to those at the end, but. So now, Marc, talk to me about what Choose Boston's doing now, and how the business is structured. What are you working on?
Sure. So I kind of have a real unique perspective, which I appreciate. Which is I work for a group called New Boston Ventures, and large, established, reputable development group in the South End. So we're doing 566 Columbus right now. It's a podium building in the South End. Big stuff. And then at the same time, I'm kind of focused more or less 1 to 2 projects at a time on my own, and more of the 5, 7, 9 unit variety. So I have a project coming up in Dorchester that's a tear down of an existing single family that we permitted for 6 units. So that'll be my next endeavor.
Nice. So let's talk about that project. How did you go about finding that? Did you acquire it with a zoning contingency? Did you buy it outright? What made you decide to move forward with it? So
it was on MLS. Big piece of land. It was 3 lots, side by side by side. So it's a lot consolidation. And I just thought it was underutilized. And you kind of look around the block and see that there's some density and some precedent for you to take advantage of. So it had been on the market and they hadn't gotten their number. So floated them an offer for their price and just said, you're going to have to go along for the ride with me. And we'll get this zoned, and when we do, we'll close.
Nice. And then, so when you originally went under, did you think 6 units, or has the project changed over the past year?
It changed. It started as an 8-unit prep build. One thing that I think been successful with at times is occasionally even unit count can be a little deceiving, right? I think you and I would agree that we live and die within limitations by the square foot. Is what matters, because every square foot that I build is $220, and every square foot I sell is $550, $600. So even if it's a smaller unit count, but I can maintain some semblance of unit size, or maybe they grow, can still do well.
Yeah, no, I think that's something that's very key. We've had a few projects where we start with, my new mentality on all these projects is start with as high a unit count as I can fit into the FAR that I want. Mm-hmm. And then work backwards, consolidating units. Right. And so, for example, we started with a project in Chelsea, started at 19 units. Right. And we ended up losing, and it ended up at 10. But as we went from like small units to getting, they went from all 1 beds, and then we got to 2 beds, and we got some 3 beds. And in the end, the building shrunk a decent amount, but we ended up with some great units. By just continuing to compile the units and keeping the count there. So I think that's definitely a good option. What do you think, though? This is one thing we've been seeing a lot lately, is the idea of efficiency of a building and making sure with it what you're permitting actually is properly financial, like can be financed, and that the cash flows work well. I think I've seen so many projects lately where people are, and you and I talked about this the other day, it's sometimes maybe they're forced into it, and by the end, it's either move forward with something that doesn't work or walk away. But what are things you look for in making those decisions early on?
Yeah, that's a good point. So building efficiency is huge, right? And the idea is what is your loss to circulation or common space? So a very common trick that we'll employ is if it's a 3-unit building and I can use the 3rd unit and provide that unit entry door on the landing below. Now that entire staircase is private to that unit and therefore sellable. So it's a more efficient building. But constantly looking at hallways and common space and seeing where we can pull to make sure that we have a building that's designed as efficiently as possible.
Yeah, what type of ratio should people be looking for on their efficiency ratio?
Rule of thumb is on larger stuff, you lose 15% to circulation. On a 3-unit building, you really shouldn't be losing 15%. 2 units, I love just making 2 private entrances and it's 100% sellable.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's, on the 3-unit projects, I talked about this the other day, it's very simple to figure out your loss, right? When you're starting your condo conversion, you look at the building size, it's a 3,000 square foot building, get your tape measure and go in there and just quickly measure that common staircase.
Yeah.
Right. And minus that amount. And there you go. You lost 300 square feet. You're at 2,700 now. Mm-hmm. Right. So it's a quick calculation to see where you're at.
Yeah. What are some of the first things you look for in a property, Ricky? What are things that jump out at you at that first showing or walkthrough that indicate quality or a good opportunity?
So right now, from a rental perspective, I'm looking for buildings that I can walk in. My preference would be either a building that's already semi-updated and that can be rented right away, right? So that we're able to get in and I'm able to just rent it. If it's not that, it's a building that just needs a light cosmetic update where I can get in and I can do a quick renovation and kitchens, baths, paint, floors, get it ready, have an electrician and plumber run through the whole building and make sure everything is functioning properly, and then rent it right away so that it continues forward in a manner without a ton of expenses.
Yeah.
And it's delivered vacant. What I really don't want to get into is I do not want to buy a building that's a dump and that has tenants. Because it's just the expenses will just kill you. Yeah. You've got tenants living in really rundown units. They won't move out because they're living for really cheap. And then you can't actually make the repairs you need because they won't leave.
Right.
And you're in this cycle of just continuously spending money, but you can't do the actual repairs that are needed. So right now, either something that's been updated with tenants or something that's delivered mostly vacant. I know you went and looked at the one I actually just put under agreement in Chelsea. So I ended up moving forward with that. And to me, that's a great buy for me because I can have my GC in there the day we close, get the first floor sorted out, do some quick renovations, get the building updated, and those 2 units will be looking beautiful within 30 days.
Yeah.
And then get them re-rented. Heating systems are old. I'd say, heating systems are an interesting thing for people to understand because when you're buying a building and the heating systems are old, I have buildings that have 30-year-old heating systems, right? That still work perfectly fine every year. I've had buildings that had newer heating systems that shit the bed.
Yeah.
Right. So, I think when you're looking at a building as a long-term hold, you kind of have to understand that you're going to replace the heating systems at some point in the life of the building. So, just plan on that at some point. It could happen the day you buy it, or you might not. I've owned buildings for 12 years now, 10 years now, and never touched the heating systems. So I think, don't look in and see an old heating system and go, oh, that's an immediate $5,000 expense per unit. It might not be one for a while.
Yeah.
I don't know what are you looking for?
No, I mean, a lot of times, especially older furnaces are just workhorses. They're fairly simple machines, and you're right. They can just go, It's a dumb analogy, but I had a boat that was like a 1991, and this thing was just had no bells or whistles. It was just simple, and it was awesome, and it never broke. And the second I upgraded that, this new thing, every week there was a problem. You know,
Yeah.
this electrical or that. There's the old things, just no sensors, just work.
Yeah. No, and I asked my HVAC guy this was a couple months ago. I was like, hey, I'm buying these buildings. Should I budget new HVAC systems in my reno?
Mm-hmm.
And he's just like, are they working?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, it seems like they work. They turn on, he goes, no. Get us in there, do a quick cleaning and update, like maintenance on them. And we'll ride those things till they die. Sure. And then we'll change them. Yeah. And it takes they change them in a day. It goes, they switch it out. So, I think that's, something to think about. So let's talk about some of the stuff you're doing now. Are you looking at projects that are condos or rentals or both or buy and holds? How's that structured?
Yeah, we had a good conversation about this the other day, right? I think long term, I want to be a landlord. I want to buy and own rentals. I think in the short term, I call it a deal with the devil. It's a very capital intensive business, and that's no secret. And the way that you build your capital and your base is to do condo plays. Condos are taxed at ordinary income. So typically almost 50% of everything you fought for goes back to the government. And whereas, rentals in the long term are just so much, the tax treatment's better. It's much a better way to accumulate real wealth.
Yeah, and I think, it's a battle to get to the point. And I think, to where you're able to step back and say, I'm looking at projects right now. We have a couple coming up, and they are home run condo projects.
Yeah.
Like, big profits, $500,000, $1 million profits. When you look at them as a hold, you literally have to say, I'm going to make almost nothing every year. And, and you're saying I could make this amount now, or it's going to barely cash flow, going to make like 20, 40, 50K a year on this asset, but you're paying down a huge mortgage and you're building your wealth in that asset. And it's something with no CapEx. It's a brand new building. You can maintain it and hold it for 20 years. Yeah. And, that decision is extremely hard to make. And I've been talking to a lot of people, and like, now that we're looking at deals in that manner, it is really hard right now to build a rental building. Right.
That's where I was going next. It's like, if you show me something that needs like replacement in kind, like kitchens will stay where they are, bathrooms stay where they are, but I just need to redo them. And, it's got good bones, to use a cliche. I like that as a rental. It's real tough to go ground out on a rental.
Yeah, that's the thing. Our model always, up until this point, has been build to sell, buy to hold.
Yeah.
Build to sell, buy to hold, and then continuously acquire rentals as we sell condos ground up.
Yeah. You know why, though? I think the market forces behind it are you have to think of best and highest use. So we're competing with guys who might not have the patience and might look at those big paychecks, like you said, and keep bidding it up and up. Whereas guys who are just running them as rental pro formas are going to stop bidding a long time ago. So to be successful in the acquisition, you kind of have to look at it as a condo in the city, in places where the condos are worth so much.
Yeah, I think, and it's kind of crazy. And people have been bringing me leads, and they're bringing them to me in non-condo markets. Yeah. Right, areas of Dorchester there's no condos right now. Areas of Hyde Park, like where the condo market is just not there. Like, you're looking at what condos sell for. There are a few, but they're sold for like, they're 1,500 square feet and they sold for $400K. Right. You can barely build it for that.
If I can't sell for $450 a square foot or more, I'm not even going to go near it.
You run the numbers. You literally they couldn't give you the land.
Yeah, right.
They'd pay you to take the land. Pay me, and I still won't make money.
I've seen deals like that for sure. Hey, it's funny because we've been talking for the last 2 months, right? And every time we talk, we check in on the market. So we're now sort of into this thing. What's your take?
So, I mean, it's interesting right now. it seems like things are picking back up. People are, you know, the market, you know, at Evo, we've had about six things go under agreement for people with buyers buying stuff in the last 2-3 weeks. So people are back out there, and I think you're starting to see that couple months of pent up buyers. But it's the people whose lives didn't change.
Yeah.
Right? Their job's still in place. They're just working from home. They didn't get laid off, and they're still ready to buy. And, you know, especially now, they might really be ready to buy because they're sick of their rental.
Right.
You know? So.
You know, I wonder, I think that we all have sort of an interest in telling the story where the market's strong and is going to continue that way, and for obvious reasons. But if I'm going to be a pessimist, I'm going to say that we have huge unemployment, especially high among college-educated folks. So it's not just, you know, minimum wage earners. And I feel like there was a ton of buyers who were in the market pre-COVID, and we're just getting beat out week in, week out by cash buyers. And we're frustrated, and all of a sudden, like, they're still around and they're taking things off the table right now. But I have some concern that we're sort of running on adrenaline or gas that we put in the tank 90 days ago, and that as this is going to get worse before it gets better. That's kind of my prediction.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be interesting to see. I think it's the big factor is going to be how things go the next, you know, into June, right? Does this plan that comes out allow for things to start opening again and people get back to work? And are we getting things moving again? Or are they taking the stance that things are still halted?
Yeah.
And if that continues, you know, there's no, things can, if unemployment stays where it's at, it's going to have an effect on everything.
Definitely.
You know, the market, like the economy right now is brought to nothing. There's no spending going on.
Yeah. I mean, I can't understand the stock market either. We had the best April ever. It's like, I guess folks are, if they're being rational, they're saying that in 2 years' time, we'll either have a vaccine or 70% of Americans will have had the disease and will have herd immunity. And so this will be in our rear view. But man, you look at Southwest Airlines losing $35 million a day, and all the other industries that are so dramatically affected, and all of our retirement accounts just shrinking. It's hard to understand.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you think about almost every industry, right, there's very few that are not being affected by this.
Totally.
Like, you know, everyone, I don't care what business you work in, there are some that have actually gone up in this space, but majority, everyone's being affected negatively. And so, like, how long can that continue without us coming out of this rut until we see drastic problems?
Yeah. No, our team talks a lot about designing for COVID and how buildings of the future will respond. And the one thing that we still haven't quite wrapped our head around is elevators. So on some of the larger stuff, you know, it's not even so much like if you touch the button, it's just you go to a building that's a high rise, and in the morning, especially office buildings, I should almost preface with that, but you're kind of packed shoulder to shoulder in there, and there isn't really a good way around that.
Right. You know, and I think is this going to be, are people going to make long-term decisions because of how this occurred?
Yeah.
Right. Are things going to change, or is it going to be, are we going to talk in a year and the vaccine's going to come out and people are going to be like, oh,
I know,
back to life.
Yeah.
Until the next one.
Yeah, I know. Hopefully we'll be more prepared for it.
So we got a couple questions here. Let's see. So, Jared Clement asks, what about doing modular for a rental building?
Modular. We've studied modular a lot. The best I can get on it is it may save you time and some risk, but that the costs, it hasn't represented a significant cost savings. And your lenders are always squeamish about modular because they need to write a big check up front. And so there's always a bit of negotiation when you tell a lender you're going to go modular, and it's just always been this, you know, thing that's out there that's going to come and reshape the industry, but it hasn't.
Yeah, I think that's the constant thing you're hearing. It's like, yes, it can save you time, maybe a little bit on if everything goes perfect. if it all happened perfectly, it could save you time and maybe save you money. But the continuous stories is that does not happen. Right? The process is complicated. You got to get the inspections, the state, the city. There's multiple people involved with getting it inspected and approved. And then in the end, you know, you end up with a product that do buyers or renters, will they buy something and rent in something that's a modular?
Yeah. I mean, you know, I think the old knock that they all look boxy and this and that, you know, I think that's come a certain way because they've made some advances. But you know, you do sacrifice ceiling height. One thing that's very basic to understand is that when you put two boxes on top of each other, we call that the interstitial space. So there's a ceiling and then there's another floor assembly, and you just lost a good bit of ceiling height. And when we're working in places where we can't go above 35 feet or 40 feet, that starts to hurt.
Yeah. So so just run through what modular is for people who don't know.
Sure. Modular is constructed. Boxes are constructed off-site in a factory, and you set the foundations, and you prepare the foundations, and they come with a crane, and they set the boxes, and everything's pretty much done for you once you've set them. And that's the promise.
Yeah. Let's see here. So what else do we got? What's your guys' opinion on long distance investing on buy and holds?
Ricky, I don't know. I can't get comfortable with it, but it doesn't mean I'm right. I just think, you know, you can, it's a dumb saying, but there are hunters and there are gatherers. And like, we live in the best real estate market in the country. People are coming here from everywhere in the world to try to play in this market. And I know every single block and neighborhood. And why would I go to Ohio? I mean, I'm clearly wrong because the rental numbers would tell me that.
No,
guys who are killing it doing that.
You're not wrong though, because the thing is it all comes back to knowledge, right? And it's all going to be about, you know, your knowledge and your ability to oversee the portfolio, right? If you have a person on the ground in Ohio who can source the deals and do that, I don't call that investing out in long distance, because you have a local person who's doing it. And, you know, it's like someone investing with Volnay Capital. That's them investing out of state, but they're not really investing out of state because I'm here. Right. So I think if you have someone in an area who's knowledgeable, who's sourcing deals, that's a different thing. When I hear about these people like, oh, I heard about a deal in Ohio, and I go, there's a me in Ohio who's passing on that.
Yeah.
He heard about it 6 months ago and knew it was a dud.
Right.
Right. There's anything that comes to you has been passed and picked over by the guys who are on the ground.
There's no two ways about it. It's more risk. Like you can't tell that story any different. If you want me to manage a project that's out of state or a couple hour drive, like just instantly I lose that much control over it, and I have that much less knowledge of that area. So there's ways to do it and opportunities for sure. But for the time being, I'm focused more outside my window.
Yeah, and I think too the idea is like people chase cap rate. Cap rate is based specifically along risk.
Yeah.
Higher cap rate, typically more risk.
Mm-hmm.
If you buy a rental in Ohio, right, the reason the cap rate is higher is if the economy tanks, your building goes to nothing, right? And so when you're doing that, you need to take that into account. The reason, Boston cap rates, they're low. It's a 4, a 5, a 6, a 7. And that's because your asset is stable, and it held through 2007, and it will hold through the future. And that's why your cap rates are low, because you're buying a stable asset. So, you know, don't chase high cap rates thinking that that's the end all be all, because in the long run, you could really get screwed.
Yeah, I'm with you. How's the Volnay Live going for you? Have you been enjoying it? You're not going to start a podcast, are you?
No podcast.
Thanks for leaving the Real Estate Addicts that.
It's been fun. I mean, I've talked to a ton of, almost every HGTV host. They've gotten a little repetitive, if I'm going to be honest.
Yeah,
sure.
How many times we talk about waterfall countertops?
how many times can I talk about designs and kitchens and stuff? So I prefer this type of interview. You know, I think that overall it's been a cool thing to do over the past. I've met a lot of cool people. A lot of the interviews I've had conversations with on the cell phone and talked and, you know, heard their stories. So I definitely think that the network has grown, and I have now these contacts with a lot of these people that are experts in the business. But one of the most interesting things to find out is like almost all of them, a lot of them are not experienced or experts, right?
Tell me more.
So if you start watching through a lot of these interviews, like a lot of them kind of got this opportunity when they were early in their career.
Yeah.
And that their career was not established. And then they got this TV show, and then the career was built with it.
Right. They're just TV personalities.
They got picked because they had a good personality and that they had a good concept and all that. And then their business grew with the show. It's not like someone who had a ton of experience and was there are some, but like it's killing it, and then, you know, they get a show. Yeah,
the Property Brothers. They're trained actors. They're not
right. You know, so you know, that's been interesting. I think like Sean Conlon was an awesome interview. You know, Pat from the Bucks last week was cool hearing his story. And you know, we're trying to get some more guests that are, you know, going to be, you know, more real estate specific than design specific. You know, so we'll see if they move forward. Got a couple ticklers out there with some big names that have said, you know, so that have said yes. But so we got Grant Cardone responded and said he would do it.
Dude.
So I'm still waiting to see. He hasn't scheduled it yet, but he said yes. So that would be cool to get him on the podcast or on the live and talk to him and hear his story. But how's the podcast going? Are you guys back filming?
Yeah, we love it. We just bought microphones for the home offices because we're obviously not in the studio anymore, which is kind of a bummer. But we're bringing in about a guest a week. We're going to do our next two, should be interesting. We have a lawyer lined up who specializes in opportunity funds and opportunity zones. And then we're actually going to do one on bankruptcy, which unfortunately I think is a topical issue, and just what that means and how you can protect assets if you're facing the worst. We sort of view it as our own master's degree or PhD. Like it's amazing. Well, this attorney who's joining us bills at $450 an hour, and he's going to spend 2 hours of his time with us. And so we're just trying to soak up as much as we can and pass it on.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, let's talk quick about opportunity zones.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those, I don't know your opinion on them. It's so funny talking to experienced guys and experienced finance guys about it. And like almost, I don't know if you've heard this, but almost everyone is like overrated, underrated, appropriated.
Yeah.
Overrated.
Stamp it.
Big time.
Yeah. You know, we had
overrated.
We had Ed Glazer on the podcast, who's a Harvard economist who studies housing and urbanism, and he just railed on opportunity zones and the underlying economics for like 10 minutes.
But every person that I've talked to who I look at who's like more knowledgeable than I am on the financial side, and you know, they've all said opportunity zones are such a joke. It's completely done wrong. And that like it just doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And then, you know, it's all these people are piling in, and it never formatted. It never happened the way it was supposed to.
Yeah.
You know, it's the idea that you're going to all of a sudden invest this money in an area where there's not demand, right? A lot of these zones are in areas where there's not proper demand.
Yeah.
You should not force build in an area that doesn't have proper demand.
Yeah, that's basically what Ed said. He said you can't just like expand supply drastically in a place where there's no demand and hope to increase price. He said that's not the way supply and demand works.
So there's all these people, experts, that are saying like, talk about a bubble for these buildings that cost a lot to build, were built in opportunity zones, and then their rents are going to not hit the numbers they need to. And they're not going to get the returns they need. And then you're going to have buildings that don't fill up. Then what?
Yeah.
You know, the idea of, oh, you can hold it for 10 years and you don't have to pay taxes. Okay. It's the same thing as a 1031.
Right. Right.
I don't have to pay taxes either.
I know.
I build it, I stabilize it. If I want to liquidate, I do a 1031 exchange.
Mm-hmm.
I also don't have to pay taxes.
Right.
So why do and I can do it in an area that has great rents and high demand.
Well, I'll ask this attorney when he comes on the podcast next week, so we'll press him a little bit.
All right, guys. Any other questions? Anything you want to finish up with, Marc?
No, man. It's been a lot of fun. I always enjoyed our chats.
Yeah.
What's the latest? What's the latest on your big project, the 600?
So we're starting the process of hiring our GC. So we're down to we've narrowed it down from about 11 down to our final 4. So we've got Callahan, NEI, Delphi, and Erland. And so we're in the process of those final conversations, getting in their proposals. You helped me, obviously, thank you for that, of getting like a detailed email back to them. So we sent them that like a week and a half ago. So we're waiting to hear back on their detailed proposals. And then once they're hired, we're going to bring them in as a pre-con phase. Between now and October, we're going to get a set of plans into the building department.
Nice.
And so on October 1st is our plan to submit to the building department a set of construction docs. And then January of 2021, we will break ground and we will build this thing.
Dude, well, I'm excited for you. This is going to be awesome.
So it's going to be an interesting process. I think there's some big decisions that have to be made with obviously who's going to build it. I think that, what would you say? Is that the biggest decision?
No, I'll end with this. I often think that it's the team that you get from the general contractor that matters more than the general contractor. Oftentimes the construction costs, the trades are the same electrician, the same plumber, the same concrete guys. They're going to bid all those same 4 general contractors you just mentioned. So you're in a good spot right now where you can shape the design and make sure that you have a building that's cost effective to build and to own in the long term.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, this has been awesome. Anyone who missed or joined midway through, we'll edit this up and we'll put it up on the YouTube channel, in the next couple of days. But, Marc, thanks for joining us.
Dude, thanks, Ricky.
Peace, bud.